Hello, followers, and welcome to Things Invest, where I talk about investing, finance, and professional development. For today's terms only, the investment talk today will be Ethereum ticker ETH. So, my second posting us up today. Respect to recording time of 3:32 p.m. on Eastern time. Ethereum currently trading $3,451, down about 11.83% so far. Respect to overall crypto market is relatively red today, right? With respect to Bitcoin down about 11%, Dogecoin down about 17.4%. Cardano down about 15%, while Solana's up about 8% so far, reaching close to $200 mark earlier today, which was just astronomical. With respect to XRP, down about 21.41% so far. So with respect to the media affectation front, specifically around Ethereum, I've been collecting some news in the last, I would say, 5 hours so far, ever since my late breakfast and my early lunch, if you may. I just had one meal today. With respect to 1 hour ago, Market Watch talking about Bitcoin briefly nosedive 18%, Dogecoin tumbles 30%, and market stages wipes out as El Salvador, the country in South American region, makes crypto legal currency, which is something that we appreciate as political side of the house start further getting commercialized and adopted going forward. So we are taking a relatively monumental step starting from South America as the global adoptions for crypto assets going forward. So it's more just like regurgitating news is something we are well aware of in the last couple of days so far. They just basically regurgitating that is selling off today. Try to drive some fear mongering, if you may, right? With respect to second news on Bazinga about an hour ago, talk about on Coinbase. The stock falls alongside with Ethereum, Bitcoin as crypto market crashes. This is obviously the correlation effects from the crypto asset sell-off, with subsequently drive Coinbase to sell off from there. But in terms of technical analysis, I think Coinbase has been a trade on a sideways fashion at the low $250, $240. I think those are a good level to dollar cost average at if you believe in the long-term value proposition of the stock. With respect to the sell-off today, it has nothing really to do with the fundamental of the business as a whole, despite obviously the lack of customer service satisfaction that we've been experiencing so far, me personally, and some of the compliance gray area or I would say just ethical activities that we've been observing so far. That's something we might have to be aware of, but I think today might be an interesting dip if you want a dollar cost average, just a logical level from there, right? And with respect to CNBC, talking about with respect to El Salvador again, officially adopting Bitcoin as legal tender to the NFT market booming. So with respect to this news on CNBC, it's another old news. Again, news are never really new news. And with respect to CNBC about 2 hours ago, it's just more of a regurgitation. Again, right? We have talked about this about 2 days ago now, so 48 hours ago. Another one coming from Bazinga again about 4.5 hours ago. Standard Chartered, a bank based out of the Asian Pacific region, predicts that Ethereum will hit $35,000, catching up with Bitcoin's market cap. So obviously, this is something that we've talked about before, right? It's really contingent on the corporate adoptions going forward. So with respect to the predictions that Standard Chartered has, and also alongside with J.P. Morgan, which released a crypto report, I would say about a couple. I would say not too long ago, about like a month ago, ever since the B word summit, right? We know about that J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs and even some other banks globally are starting to commercialize a crypto offering to institutional clients and also with high net worth clients as well. So I know different analysts have different predictions. So 35,000 is speculations again, right? But it's good to read that Standard Chartered have the stamp of approval for Ethereum. So I would say this is like a pseudo substantive news, but more just like informative, just good to read, but I would say more trivial, if you may, right? Everybody have the different objective or incentives behind why they're propelling what they are saying in the research or the reports. So something good to read for your reference only, if you may, right? With respect to Bazinga 4 hours ago, talk about Ethereum correction. Is it over? I think the technical analysis we will dive into a little bit more to talk about, is this really over? And I think the short answer would be no. I think the correction should subsequently endure a little bit more, and we could talk about that a little bit later. And then with respect to other news, more regurgitation news talk about why Bitcoin related and Ethereum related are falling, like again, right, with respect to the sectoral rotation or just asset class rotation across the equity side of the spectrum versus crypto side of the spectrum, right? Across the growth stocks and tech stocks today, we've been seeing a relatively green surge across the spectrum, right? This is something that is expected with respect to the rally that we should technically endure up until the Santa Claus rally by end of Q4, right? So this is just some of the early foreshadow of what's going to be coming going forward on the equity side. And another news coming from CNBC again, talking about 7 hours ago, Kim Kardashian cryptocurrencies Instagram ads sparked criticism from UK financial watchdogs. Obviously, this is something that we talked about earlier this morning, right? Kim Kardashian, she's an influential member specifically in the US market, but she does have a relatively sizable following on Instagram and also on Twitter and all the other social media platforms. So with her stamp of approval for cryptocurrencies, it will subsequently have some pump effects or correlation effects to drive some buying pressure for those that are not that familiar with crypto. But with her stamp of approval, that could subsequently drive some buying pressure, right? So I think that could definitely raise some red flags with the financial regulators. But something too good to be reading about. But we've seen that type of activities from Elon Musk, from Jack Dorsey's. I mean, whales have been doing it for ages now. It's just that they're more subtle with it, right? They manipulate the media companies to pump. But Kim Kardashian she just did it in a very apparent, obvious way, right? With her posting. So, which obviously raised some red flags or eyebrows among regulators. But good to know, but nothing really substantive, if you may, right? So, talk about the substantiveness of the technical analysis. So let's just take closely, right? With respect to the sell-off that we have had today, we sold down all the way from $3,913 all the way to the $3,007 today. So that was $1,000 drop approximately, right? A relatively sizable one. And this is something we've been expected, right? And the reason why we sold down is because we don't really have any substance despite the first level of substantiveness, right? First level of consolidation, not substantiveness. A non-substantive consolidation zone somewhere around like the 3,450, and we sold down all the way because we crashed down all the way to the bottom of the next substantive resistance level of the 3,150. But we broke that completely, and now we hit all the way to the $3,000 mark, and that's a flat number. Remember, we did have $1,000 drop, right? And now we kind of hover back up to close to be about 3,429, below the 3,450, which is technically the next non-substantive consolidation zone, but we are below it, so there's a bearishness, right? We couldn't get there. And with respect to the surge that we're seeing right now, it's mainly coming from public investors, not really institutional investors, right? They already sold, they already took profit. Remember, the institutional or the whales bought in at the 2,750, 2,450, which is below, right? So what we're seeing right now is basically public investors buying the dip, right? Would this be a logical dip? I think so. With respect to the $3,000 mark, if you got lucky and your Coinbase or your Binance app didn't crash on you at the time, which I think we did, probably. I wouldn't be surprised either. That's, for those that are bought at the 3,000, that's just a logical move. We've been talking about this for ages, right? But ideally, I think we should be further crossing downward a little bit, knowing the fact that this is a bearish setup, knowing the fact that we crossed the golden cross, which is the reason why we hit the 4,000 in the complacency stage. This is the last hurrah that we've been talking about, that we consolidated sideways fashion, and then with the dip because of the rotation, we are seeing a negative death cross at the moment. You see that the golden line is slowly crossing with the signal line. On top of the fact, RSI is slowly depleting right now, but I think we still have a little bit more room to drop a little bit. I think we're midway, but ideally you want to be buying at 3,000, 2,700, 2,450. I've been getting some questions in the comment section. Would the 3,000 be the bottom, or should we see a little bit more drop? I think because of the fact that we are seeing a cross section forming slowly, once we cross, that's the death cross, and once we get there, the ball needs to go through that trajectory to go down even further. So I think 2,450, 2,750 would technically be the bottom coming, right? And by then, you'll see that, just like logically speaking, the line of this RSI will slowly deplete back down to the 30s levels, right? And once we get there, I think that will be the opportune time for you to buy at. But 3,000 is a great level for those that got lucky today, right? And that's the level you want to be marching towards, right? It's a logical level to apply the methodology we've been talking about, right? So with respect to the cheat sheet again, right? We are in the complacency zone. On next phase, we might be foreshadowing coming forward. Will be a bunch of negative news coming, right? Talk about how bad is Ethereum, how bad is Bitcoin, driving anxiety around people like, oh my god, the dip is taking longer than expected. My investments, they will come back, or people are denying, and people start panicking. And once we get to the panics mode, and I will be, keeping an eye close to the media affectation, right? From now on to this point, you would want to keep tabs on all the news that's coming forward, because I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see like consecutive just negative news in the next 20 to 30 days. Right? Remember, we hit all the way from the 1750 before, and we pumped up with like a whole month of positive news, right? 12 positive news on a daily basis across different side of the media affectation, right? So hitting all the way back down in the next 25 to 30 days would not be surprising to me, right? And for us to like completely disregard all of these media affectation, know that these are just manipulations, right? So we have to stay within the frames of reference that we've been talking about, which are the levels that we've identified so far, right? 3,000, 2,750, 2,450. Do we see below 2,450? I think that's unlikely, knowing the fact that 2,750, 2,450 are relatively substantive level, right? But it ultimately depends on how the whales are going to be manipulating us going forward. And ultimately, these are the logical levels to dollar cost average at. And for those that unfortunately bought at the 4,000, right, just hold. Don't worry about it. Just hold for a long term. It could be a little bit painful. It definitely will test your patience a little bit. But long term wise, 12 months price target will be 9,800. As the sector rotation happens again later in Q1 next year, we should technically reach all-time high again, or way above all-time high again, to go through the whole market cycle again, knowing the fact that bottom, technically, in a technical perspective again, right, is 2,400, 2,750. Compare that to 1,750 or below that, basically months before, right? So technically, the bottoms are further escalated. We have erected new platforms that we never had before, in a culture perspective, right? So that's something we appreciate. It's gonna take some time, so definitely practice patience and just like cool off and don't panic. And this is something that's supposed to happen. It's logical, and I will be keeping you guys, a close observation of, and I will keep you guys updated as I observe the news and see how the technicals gonna be playing out going forward. And I really appreciate you for watching and believing in the technicals. I'm not a wizard again. I'm just someone that reads charts. And luckily, with my basically close to a decade of training on Wall Street is paying off a little bit. And there's nothing to be bragging about. It's just part of the technicals, right? And that's why fundamentals and technicals are always important into formulating your investment decisions, right? The risk profile is slowly depleting, which is something we appreciate, and I will keep my cash reserve on the side to look up for the next dip coming for the dollar cost average to hopefully build 100 Ethereum someday for me. Right now I'm still at 55, right? So still working on it, right? Really appreciate you, and stay tuned for this coming up. Take care. Bye.